Hi, I'm Aurelia, and for years I paid every bill, every medical expense, every holiday dinner, quietly, thinking that love meant sacrifice. But one afternoon, I came home with my husband and son and found our things dumped on the porch like garbage. They said, "We voted, you're out." The same family I fed, clothed, carried, erased me like I was never part of it. But what they didn't know is that I kept every receipt, every transfer, every lie. So before we begin, tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are, and have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? I read every one. The house was already humming when I parked along the curb. From the sidewalk, I could see warm light spilling from the dining room windows, silhouettes moving back and forth. I hesitated, fingers resting on the door handle. In the back seat, Milo's head tilted against his booster. He had fallen asleep during the drive, one hand still clutching the little Lego man he brought everywhere. I didn't want to wake him. I also didn't want to walk in without him. I shook his shoulder gently. "Hey, bud, we're here." He blinked, rubbing his eyes. "Are they making cake?" I smiled, even though I already knew the answer was probably no. "Maybe." We stepped onto the porch together. I balanced the casserole dish in one hand, adjusted the strap on my bag with the other. My husband Dorian had offered to come, but I told him to rest. He'd been working double shifts all week. I figured, naively, that bringing Milo might soften the edges. Marlena, my mother, opened the door before we knocked. "Aurelia," she said, voice just polite enough, "you're a few minutes late." "I brought the garlic casserole you like," I replied. She didn't acknowledge the dish. Her eyes dropped to Milo, then flicked past us toward the street. "Shoes off at the entry." Inside, the smell of baked ziti and lemon cleaner clung to the air. The dining room table gleamed, 6 places set with polished silverware and napkins folded like fans. I scanned the table twice. No seat for Milo, not even a stool from the kitchen. "I guess he can sit with me," I said gently. I placed my casserole down and pulled my chair back, lifting Milo into my lap. Isolde, my older sister, glanced up from her phone. "You're going to let him eat off your plate? That's charming." "I'll make it work." Dinner began the way all our dinners did. Stiff smiles, clinks of silverware, conversation about safe things, weather, church events, the price of eggs. I sipped water and tried to keep my breathing even. Milo reached for pasta with his tiny fork, knocking over a breadstick. No one offered a napkin. Midway through the meal, Isolde stood. She held a cream envelope. "Mom, here's a little something from my bonus. Thought you could use it." Marlena took it with both hands, eyes glowing. "You're so thoughtful. Always have been." I chewed slower. Just 2 days ago, I had wired Mom $1,500 through the bank app. She'd called crying about car repairs and her rising electric bill. She hadn't said thank you. My name had been right there on the transfer receipt, but they didn't see it. Or pretended not to. I said nothing. The conversation drifted. Marlena gestured at the casserole. "Is this yours, Aurelia?" I nodded. "She still can't boil pasta, bless her heart," she said, loud enough for the whole table. Isolde's laugh came too fast. Even my father chuckled. Milo looked up, brows furrowed. "But I like it." I touched his shoulder. "That's okay, baby." "I'll try better next time," I said, steady, keeping the smile pinned like a badge. Inside, something unspooled, slow and acidic. Later, during dessert, my sister sent a message to someone. I caught a glimpse of it as she scrolled past me toward the kitchen. The screen lit up for a second. "She's really still trying, huh?" That night, after I'd tucked Milo into his bed back home and washed the dishes with robotic hands, I sat at the kitchen table. The same table I'd bought for our apartment, paid for with freelance projects and stretched paychecks. I stared at the leftover casserole in its Tupperware, still good, still untouched. That night, I stared at my son's empty plate, and I finally understood. I wasn't just overlooked, I was erased. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Milo sitting on my lap with no plate of his own. I saw Isolde's message, that smug little jab pretending to be private. And I saw the look on my son's face when he realized people were laughing at me. Saturday afternoon came with a faint breeze and a clear sky. What people in Ohio like to call a perfect spring day. Dorian had suggested a last-minute weekend trip just to get out of the house, he said. I agreed, mostly to give Milo something different, even if it was just a cheap little Airbnb outside town with a playground nearby. On the way back, Milo sat in the back seat, humming to himself, holding a wrinkled drawing he made that morning. I'm gonna show Grandma, he beamed. She'll love the colors. I smiled at him through the rearview mirror. She'll like it, baby. You worked hard. Dorian reached for my hand across the console and squeezed it once, like a punctuation mark. He didn't say much on the drive. He rarely did after family dinners like that. I think the silence was his way of coping. As we turned onto my parents' street, I glanced up from my phone and felt my stomach tighten. There, sitting squarely on the porch, was a line of our things: suitcases, plastic garbage bags, sagging at the corners, a box with my old laptop and chargers, Milo's toy basket half open, a stuffed dinosaur poking out like it was trying to escape. Milo squinted. Mom, is that our stuff? I didn't answer. I parked slowly, stepped out, my legs stiff and heavy. I walked up to the porch, heart hammering, and knocked twice. The door creaked open just an inch, revealing Marlena's face through the small slit. Her expression was unreadable, neither angry nor warm, just resolute. It's time you stood on your own, Aurelia, she said calmly, as if reciting something from a script. We talked about this. We did not, I said, blinking. Behind her, Isolde appeared, arms crossed over her chest. You've been here too long. It's not personal. We voted. My voice cracked. You what? Majority said it was time, she continued. We have to prioritize stability. Stability? I laughed once, hollow. You mean your comfort? Marlena shut the door a little more. Please don't make this harder. Then it clicked. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out, hands shaking. A message from my cousin appeared, screenshot attached. A family group chat I'd never been in. We all agree? She has to go. Don't drag it out. She's had long enough. She's not even pulling her weight. It's sad. Then Isolde. I'll handle it. Just act normal around her. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. Dorian stood beside me now, reading over my shoulder. They planned this? He asked quietly. No, I whispered. They executed it. Behind us, Milo clutched his drawing, eyes wide. Did I do something bad? I bent down, wiping at my face. No, sweetheart, not you. He looked back at the porch. Why won't they let us in? I couldn't answer that one. We loaded what we could into the car, the rest we'd come back for. I didn't cry until later, until we pulled into a rundown motel by a gas station on the outskirts. The room smelled like lemon air freshener and something older, like mildew under the surface. Milo curled up on the bed beside me, already drifting off. Dorian sat in the corner, scrolling his phone, silent. I opened the family group chat. I scrolled past every name that had once called me niece, cousin, daughter. I read each message again, let them sear into me. Then I deleted it. Later that night, I looked at my sleeping son in the motel bed beside me and knew I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I didn't sleep much that night. Motel pillows always feel too flat, the air too dry, the silence too loud. Milo lay beside me, his chest rising and falling with the soft rhythm of a child who hadn't quite grasped the weight of what had happened. I watched him, tracing the outline of his face in the dim light leaking through the curtains. I used to believe I was doing all of this for him. But something shifted inside me the moment I saw our suitcases lined up like a yard sale special. By morning I hadn't made a decision, but I knew I couldn't stay numb. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. I slid out of bed quietly and pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt. Downstairs, the front desk clerk told me about a diner 2 blocks away. I texted my friend Tanya, asking if Milo could nap a while longer at her place. She replied instantly, "Of course, take all the time you need." At the cafe, I chose a seat by the window. The courthouse loomed across the street, its heavy stone facade more familiar than I wanted to admit. I stirred cream into my coffee with a shaky hand. Dorian walked in 10 minutes late, looking like he'd just rolled out of his own regret. His hair was still damp from a rushed shower, shirt untucked under his jacket. "Hey," he said as he sat down, not quite meeting my eyes. I didn't waste time. Do you think they ever respected me? He blinked, caught off guard. What? My family, your family, everyone. Do you think they ever respected me? He exhaled slowly, eyes drifting to the window. They're old-fashioned, Aurelia. They have expectations. You know how your mom is. She didn't mean— I'm not asking what they meant, I interrupted. I'm asking what you think. There was a pause, long enough to hear the soft clink of plates behind the counter. He sipped his coffee and finally said, I just don't think it's worth hanging on to. Let it go, babe. Let it go. Like it was a misplaced grudge. Like the years I spent babysitting other people's kids while raising my own, cooking for a table that only ever rolled their eyes at my food, wiring money behind closed doors while someone else took the bow, meant nothing. I tried again, quieter this time. Do you even hear yourself? I was erased from my own family's chat. They voted me out like I was rotting fruit. He reached across the table, resting his hand on mine. I'm not trying to take sides here. Maybe it's just time we focus on us. I pulled my hand away. Funny, you've been focusing on them this whole time. His jaw clenched, but he didn't deny it. A flash of memory came back. Last Thanksgiving. Isolde had laughed in front of everyone when she found out I was doing fitness videos online. Oh, wow! A content creator now. What's next? You selling tummy tea? Mom didn't say a word. Just kept carving the turkey. Dorian had patted my leg under the table that night. A silent apology I never asked for. That gesture. Meaningless. A Band-Aid on a cracked foundation. I stood up. He blinked. Where are you going? I grabbed my coat. To stop asking people to choose me. Outside, the cold air bit at my cheeks, but I didn't care. I crossed the street slowly, stopping at the steps of the courthouse. I didn't go in. I wasn't ready, not yet, but I stood there, staring at those gray stone columns, hands buried deep in my pockets. For years, I'd waited for a letter, a text, a crumb of recognition. But standing there, wind tugging at my coat, I realized something simple and awful. I wasn't waiting for them. I was waiting for me. Waiting to give myself permission to stop explaining, stop shrinking, stop accepting less than the bare minimum. I turned and walked back toward the motel. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. Not yet. I already knew the kind of message it would be. I barely slept the night before. My eyes had scanned that message 100 times. My name, spelled wrong, under an award I hadn't even known was being given. It wasn't the mistake that stung. It was the truth underneath it. I wasn't just being erased. I was being replaced, name by name, deed by deed. A few days passed. I kept busy, mostly for Milo. We stayed at the motel and then with my friend Danielle for a couple nights. She offered her sofa and gentle smiles, and I took both, pretending I didn't see the pity behind her eyes. Then the invitation came. Isolde texted me. Nathan's class is having a reading corner dedication this Friday. He'll be on stage. Thought Milo might like it. There was no hope to see you, no warmth, just obligation wrapped in formality. I wasn't planning to go, but when Milo overheard and clutched my arm, eyes wide with excitement, I knew I couldn't say no. So Friday afternoon, I packed his sketchpad and snacks into my purse, and we walked to the school auditorium. I brought a small wrapped book for Nathan, The Wind in the Willows, one of Milo's favorites. We slipped into seats in the back row. The auditorium was filled with proud parents, the hum of chatter bouncing off the varnished floors and colorful bulletin boards. I sat quietly, palms damp. Isolde stood up front, sleek in navy, smiling like she belonged to another world entirely. And then it happened. The principal stepped up to the microphone and cleared his throat. Before we begin, we'd like to thank a generous sponsor who made our new reading corner possible. A heartfelt thank you to Mrs. Isolde Greer. Applause. Even Milo clapped before glancing up at me, puzzled. But, Mommy, wasn't that from your business? I didn't answer at first. I just kept clapping slowly, politely, like my hands didn't feel like they were burning. Then I leaned over and whispered, Sometimes when you give too much, people forget who gave it. He tilted his head. That's not fair. No, it wasn't. Isolde caught my eye. She didn't look away. In fact, she smiled, tight, knowing, and gave the slightest shrug, like daring me to ruin the moment. I didn't. I stayed for the ceremony. Milo beamed when Nathan read 2 lines on stage. I smiled too, like a well-trained extra in someone else's play. Afterward, I didn't go up to the family cluster. I walked straight outside and sat on a bench under a tree near the parking lot. I watched Milo draw a robot in his notebook while the spring wind rustled the paper. Later that evening, Zoe called. We hadn't spoken in a few weeks, but she had a way of sensing things, even through silence. "You sound tired," she said after I gave her the bare-bones version of the event. "I am, but not the kind you fix with sleep." She waited. She always waited. "I made the donation from the family account," I said. "Didn't even put my name on it because I thought, maybe if the results spoke for themselves." And she took the credit. She always does. Zoe was quiet then. "Aurelia, you've been hoping they'd become someone they never promised to be." Her words stopped me. She wasn't being cruel, just precise. "You're not invisible because they can't see you," she continued. "You're invisible because you keep walking behind them." I stared out at the dim park beyond my motel, phone warm in my hand. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I'd already cried too much for people who didn't blink. "You're allowed to stop following them," Zoe added. "They're not going anywhere different." I whispered a thank you and promised to call again soon. Then I sat still for a long time, long after the call ended. Something inside me had begun to shift. It wasn't anger, not anymore. It was space. A new kind of room clearing in my chest. Not for revenge, for air. I didn't need their thanks. I just needed to stop giving mine away to people who wouldn't even remember. That night, back in the motel, I walked past the vending machines, past the front desk, and back to our little room. Milo was curled up already, limbs flung wide like only kids can sleep. I tucked the blanket under his chin and sat on the edge of the bed. And that's when I noticed it. An envelope slipped under the door. No name, just folded once, with a small smudge of blue ink in the corner. Inside were 2 $20 bills, and a note that nearly broke me. The morning sunlight slipped through the faded motel curtain, casting a pale stripe across the scratchy comforter where Milo was still curled up. I moved carefully so I wouldn't wake him, but the crinkle of paper under the door caught my ear. I padded over, still barefoot, and bent down to retrieve it. A plain white envelope, no return address, no name. Inside, 2 crisp $20 bills, and a note, scribbled in handwriting I'd know anywhere. "Hope this helps you get back on your feet. No hard feelings. M." No hard feelings. My chest tightened. I had transferred 5 times that amount to her in February alone, for utility shortfalls, for medicine not covered, and before that, rent, groceries, back-to-school shopping for a niece whose backpack I picked out myself. I stared at the bills in my palm like they might burn through the skin. The insult wasn't in the money. It was in the smallness of it. The message wasn't generosity. It was dismissal. By the time Dorian stirred, I had already folded the envelope back up and slid it into the drawer beneath the Gideon Bible. Some things didn't deserve to be kept visible. That evening, Dorian suggested we go to dinner at Jenna's, my cousin who always played both sides but claimed to stay neutral. He said, "It might help you reconnect. Show them you're not giving up." I didn't have the energy to remind him that I was the one who'd never walked away. Still, I said yes. Not for me. For Milo. He wore a shirt with tiny dinosaur prints and held a coloring page he'd made for his cousin Lila. "Can I give it to her when we get there?" he asked from the back seat. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, brushing a crumb off my jeans. I had changed 3 times before settling on something clean but unassuming. When we arrived, Jenna's house buzzed with the usual crowd. Overdressed for a weeknight, wine already flowing, someone laughing too loud in the kitchen. Dorian gave my hand a light squeeze as we stepped in. But then I saw the table, long, beautifully set, a place card at every spot, Lila's name, Jenna's fiancé, Marlena's, even though she hadn't RSVP'd. But no Aurelia, no Dorian, and certainly no high chair for Milo. Someone, maybe Jenna's husband, saw us hovering and offered, "We didn't know you were coming, but there's a bar stool in the kitchen, if that's okay?" I nodded, even smiled, said, "No worries at all," though my throat had gone dry. We took the bar stool, just one. Dorian stood behind me. Milo perched on my lap, eating bites from my plate with the kind of quiet patience that made me ache. Lila opened Milo's drawing, gave a polite thank you, and turned back to her iPad. The salad passed hands, the wine refilled. At one point, someone said, "So lucky to have Isolde. She's always there when you need her." And I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. It wasn't rage I felt. It was something softer, sadder, like dissolving. "If you've ever felt like background music in someone else's celebration," I whispered to no one, "you know what that seat meant." Back at the motel, I sat in the bathroom with the fan running and my knees pulled to my chest. Dorian leaned against the doorframe. "You okay?" he asked, arms crossed. I stared at the tile. Maybe they're right. Maybe I was just a placeholder. He sighed. "You worry too much." That was the thing. I did worry. About keeping the peace. About being good. About showing up, even when they didn't ask. Or worse, when they hoped I wouldn't. I stood, brushed off my legs, and looked at myself in the mirror. Then I said it, low and even. Then maybe it's time I stopped showing up for places I was never truly invited to. By the time sunlight filtered through the cheap motel curtains, I'd barely slept. My body had given out hours ago, but my mind? It was still pacing the same mental hallway it had been walking for weeks. Questions with no answers, memories I hadn't meant to revisit. I turned over, trying not to wake Milo. Dorian had taken him down to the motel lobby for a waffle and juice. I had maybe 30 minutes of quiet. I opened my laptop, not because I had anything urgent to do, but because clicking through job boards somehow gave me the illusion of control. That's when I saw it. A forgotten folder buried inside an email chain from 2019. Subject line, "Draft Greer Estate for review." My breath hitched. I clicked. The will opened like a wound. In the first draft, my name sat clearly beside primary beneficiary. My grandfather's house, a modest 2-bedroom in Bexley, the one I used to mow the lawn for every summer, had been left to me. Then, just 6 months later, a second document appeared. Same header, same lawyer. But this time, my name was missing. Instead, Isolde's name had taken its place. I stared at the two files, toggling back and forth, not blinking. I remembered that season like it was yesterday, how I'd offered to help pay for Grandpa's new oxygen equipment. He'd been so grateful. But just weeks after I wired the funds, Isolde suddenly started dropping by his place more often. And she never came empty-handed, always with pastries and her old college friend who happened to practice estate law. I didn't cry, not this time. I forwarded the files to Monica, a former coworker who'd gone to paralegal school. I backed them up on a flash drive. I even uploaded them to cloud storage just in case. When they take everything from you, what's left is clarity. And I finally had it. Later that day, we were invited to a family lunch at my Aunt Elaine's. Dorian insisted we go. It was just lunch, he said. Maybe it would help smooth things out. The moment we walked into the backyard, I knew smoothing wasn't on anyone's mind. Isolde was already holding court near the grill, dressed like she was attending a fashion brunch rather than a casual get-together. Her daughter, Lila, unwrapped a box with a brand new rose gold iPad inside. The whole table clapped. Milo tugged at my hand, eyes wide. "That looks like the one we bought, Mom," he whispered. I leaned forward, narrowing my eyes. And there it was, still faintly stuck underneath, the white Amazon tag from our order 2 months ago, the one Dorian had signed for. I stood up, walked across the yard, took the iPad from Lila's hands, gently, and peeled off the tag. I held it up. "This belongs to me." Silence. Just birds chirping in the maple tree overhead. Isolde blinked, her smile barely twitching. "Oh, I thought it got delivered to our place by mistake." "Must have been a long mistake," I said, turning and placing the tablet back in its box. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't need to. The silence I left hanging in the air said enough. That evening, Milo and I shared fries in the motel room while Dorian scrolled through his phone. I didn't press him. I didn't want another excuse about how families were complicated. Instead, I opened my laptop again. This time, I didn't click on job listings. I opened a blank video editor. "Hi," I said to the camera, voice calm, steady. "If you're a mom who's carried things no one ever acknowledged, this one's for you." After I uploaded that video, I didn't expect anything. Not really. I told myself it was just a way to clear my head, to move my body, maybe move through the ache. But within hours, messages trickled in. "Been carrying the same weight, sis. Thanks for saying it out loud. You're speaking for all of us moms who hold it together in silence." Somewhere between checking on Milo's snack crumbs and folding laundry on the motel bed, I realized I hadn't just hit upload, I'd lit a fuse. That morning, I walked to a small cafe near the library to draft out my second video. It had rained earlier, so everything smelled like wet pavement and new beginnings. Milo was with a friend for a few hours, and Dorian had some errands. For once, the day felt light. Then I heard it. Her voice. Isolde. She was seated behind me, tucked in the corner with her back to the window. I don't think she saw me, but I saw her reflection in the glass, flawless as always, stirring cream into her coffee like the world owed her quiet. Her voice floated, sharp and dismissive. Of course I used her money. She's too soft to fight back. Always has been. My hand didn't shake as I reached into my bag and tapped the voice memo app. I didn't turn around. I didn't gasp or cry or throw my coffee. I just recorded. 42 seconds of the truth, plain and unfiltered. That was enough. Later that evening, Dorian and I arrived at the charity gala. I'd RSVP'd a week ago, even donated 3 boxes of canned food. It was a small community event, the kind where people wore their nicest shoes and their biggest smiles. I wore navy blue, simple, clean. We walked up to the check-in table. The woman holding the clipboard looked apologetic before she even spoke. "I'm so sorry. Your name isn't here, but Isolde Greer is listed as a gold donor. Maybe she can confirm?" My throat didn't tighten. My chest didn't burn. I just nodded once and handed her the bags. "Let her have the spotlight," I said quietly. "I found better lighting." And with that, I turned around. Outside, the parking lot glistened from the earlier drizzle. I leaned against the car, unlocked my phone, and tapped the red arrow. The audio clip uploaded in under a minute. By the time we pulled into the motel lot, notifications had already started. Comments, DMs, people asking, "Is this real?" Others saying, "It was about time someone exposed her." Dorian looked over. "You're not worried this'll blow up?" I looked at him, calm. "It's already blown up. I'm just making sure the fire's seen." For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel erased. I felt deliberate. That night, Milo fell asleep with one of the canned goods still in his hand, a tin of peaches he refused to part with. I smiled, kissed his forehead, and opened my laptop. Tomorrow I'd film another video. Not out of spite, but because I was done being background noise. By the time the sun rose over Franklin County, I already knew what was coming. My inbox had become a battlefield overnight. Not from supporters, but from strangers throwing accusations I hadn't seen coming. Screenshots, threads, angry comments telling me I was ungrateful, vindictive, hungry for inheritance. Isolde had leaked a doctored screenshot, an old text I'd once sent in a spiral of frustration where I'd said, maybe I should just sue them all. I hadn't meant it, but now it was weaponized, recaptioned, and posted in the Central Ohio Families United Facebook group. It went viral within hours. The timing was strategic. My videos were just beginning to gain traction, especially the one with her voice on tape. She needed to hit first, loudest. Paint me as the unstable sister, the one who always had issues. So I got dressed calmly. I picked the same navy blouse I'd worn to Grandpa's funeral. No earrings, hair back. I didn't want sympathy, I wanted precision. The courthouse smelled of dust and old air conditioning. Room 2A wasn't large, but it held the weight of every truth no one ever wanted spoken aloud. I walked in with Janice, my attorney, and the manila folder clutched in my hand. My palms didn't sweat. My throat didn't close. I'd already lived through the real betrayal. This was just paperwork. Isolde was already seated, lipstick sharp, blazer pristine. She flashed a tight smile. Marlena sat beside her, wearing pearls I'd helped pick out for her anniversary years ago. Jenna, our cousin, leaned into the bench behind them, whispering. When the judge called the hearing to order, Janice began. First, the will. We showed the 2019 draft listing me as the primary beneficiary of Grandpa's property. Then we displayed the revised version, 6 months later, with my name removed. Janice spoke firmly, timeline in hand, highlighting the sudden increase in visits from Isolde during Grandpa's final months, often accompanied by her friend from the legal office. Next, the bank records. Quiet transfers, grocery reimbursements, school tuition covered in silence, all from me. Then the audio. I watched Marlena closely when the clip played. Of course I used her money. Isolde's voice filled the room. She's too soft to fight back. No one moved. Even Marlena looked shaken. Then came my turn. From my bag, I pulled the same envelope Marlena had once shoved under my motel door, with $40 and a note. Hope this helps. No hard feelings. I walked to her, calm, and slipped a blank check into it. In case you ever want to return what I gave, I said, loud enough for the room. Adjust for inflation. I turned to leave, but not before retrieving one last thing. The chair. The small wooden chair I used to feed Milo in, the one they claimed was part of the house. I'd bought it. I had the receipt in my tote. I picked it up and walked out with it cradled in my arms like a memory that belonged to no one but me. Some people think justice is loud, but walking out with the truth, intact and untouched, that's louder than anything they can scream. The sun poured through the east-facing windows of my new apartment as I unfolded the last box labeled Milo Books. I arranged his favorite stories, dog-eared picture books, the one about the talking tractor, and his worn copy of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, into the small shelf beside his beanbag. He was in the other room, humming to himself while coloring a sunset. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was unpacking into borrowed space. This place belonged to us. I glanced at the corner of the screen where my YouTube dashboard pulsed. 75,082 subscribers. A number. A quiet roar. Proof that showing up for yourself can echo farther than years of being quiet for others. The phone rang, and I didn't need to look to know it was her. Marlena. I let it buzz until voicemail picked up. A moment later, I opened the transcript. We just didn't know. We thought you'd always be there. I stared at those words like they were a riddle I had finally solved. They didn't mean remorse. They meant expectation, a misplaced sense of permanence, as if my presence had always been an unspoken guarantee, like the porch light or the spare bedroom. Later that afternoon, I was sorting paperwork when my fingers brushed the edge of something familiar in the drawer. The envelope. The same one from the motel floor weeks ago. The paper had softened at the edges, and the crease down the middle was more prominent now. I opened it, empty. I stood there for a long while, not angry, not hurt, just aware. That envelope was the last thing I ever gave them. Not the $40, not the years of transferred deposits or late-night pickups, but my silence, my willingness to hold my tongue in rooms that gladly swallowed it. I tucked it back in the drawer. I wanted the reminder. That evening, Milo and I took our usual walk to the corner park. Spring had finally begun to shed the last gray of winter. He skipped ahead, stopping to poke at a patch of dandelions. Then, as kids do, he asked something big like it was nothing. Do you think they'll ever say sorry? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked up at the blue sky between the branches, the same sky that stretched over the house we left, over the courtroom, over every room where my voice had been minimized. Maybe, I finally said. But we're not waiting for it anymore, are we? Milo nodded like that made perfect sense. He ran off to the swings, and I sat on a bench nearby, letting the quiet settle over me. Back home, after his bedtime routine and one more rereading of The Giving Tree, I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop and began outlining the next series for my channel. I titled it, The Reclaim Series, Strong Starts for Silent Women. I typed it slowly, carefully, then saved the file. Across from me, the chair I'd taken from my parents' house, our chair, the one I'd fed Milo in when he was still all cheeks and giggles, stood solid. It no longer begged for a place at their table. It had one now. A real one. And the will? It sat in my inbox unread for days. I didn't need to open it again. I hadn't inherited a house or a name or a title. I'd inherited myself. Sometimes justice isn't about what you take back. It's about what you refuse.